Hello, everybody. I wanted to go live again today. I saw that Dr. Rame posted an advocacy alert for calls to, be in solidarity and supporting our, disability rights community and our ongoing efforts in regard to accessible services within the United States K through 12 system across states. Most of us, I think, in the United States are pretty well aware that educational infrastructure has always been one of the key grounds for battling in federalism between states and federal rights. And I wanted to speak to this in terms of the importance of developing policy literacy and how that is actually intrinsic to our role as occupational therapists and occupational therapy assistants and occupational science scholars, regardless of the cultural context that we reside in, and building our occupational lens on how policies end up mediating not just access to our services and the sustainability of our services and our ongoing connection with the international disability rights movement. About a decade ago, when I first, got more formally embedded in the occupational therapy community, I came into my Master's of Occupational Therapy program at Eastern Washington University, having dedicated a significant percentage of my undergraduate experience towards governmental advocacy and governmental literacy. I joked before that I was kind of like Leslie Knope on my campus. I was obsessed with student government and advocating for student access to higher education and tuition policies that were putting students at risk. So that's something that I've always been incredibly passionate about, and that I learned from my, life experience doing governmental advocacy work, how important it is to integrate state and federal level advocacy. I remember 10 years ago at the time, that was kind of something that there was some sort of resistance to in the occupational therapy communities, even in leadership spaces. There was almost a sense of competitiveness around OT advocates on wanting to keep some only focusing on Washington state policies and not looking as much on Washington, D.C. However, I think us as therapists, we know very well how intimately what states decide about Medicaid, what states decide about reproductive justice and access to reproductive care, what states decide in terms of how we responded to COVID-19 pandemics. As we relate to policy, as we relate to advocacy, it's so important to build this broader lens on how these contextual factors impact how our clients are able to access our services, and how building coalitions helps us meaningfully be in solidarity with these movements and access meaningful access to employment for the jobs that we care about. It's so important to develop some awareness around these spaces. And I'm saying this because we just have an AOTA blast going out about calling OTs to unite and communicate to Congress on the federal level and join with coalitions that are advancing for protection of accessible special education services and the jobs that are there. It's these moments that create that kind of historic trauma that we go through as professions, like when there was a mass divestment from the OTs that were working in our prior mental health infrastructure that really kind of got divested from en masse throughout the 80s and 90s. I know my uncle, really, I feel that his life was impacted by that, from the divestment of those institutional supports. He ended up passing away from a preventable condition because of the lack of staffing to support that. What I was kind of wanting to talk about today is I noticed that in OT, we often silo ourselves. We say there's mental health OTs, there's school-based OTs, there's physical dysfunction OTs, acute care OTs, home health OTs, and we get so overwhelmed with how vast our profession is, how broad our scope is, all the different populations that we're signing up to support, which has now probably even scaled more expansively with the addition of 2030, which is really just saying our role to support all people. And this means signing up to support all OTs, even in specialties that you'll never practice, that you don't understand. I definitely encourage OTPs to get some awareness of what OTs are doing internationally, doing in their state. in my own personal network, even in my one state, I'm connected with OTs, not just in acute care and home health. I have friends that do nature-based practice. I have friends that are doing emerging practice, that focus their services on climate justice and climate change. I have OTs in my orbit that have big dreams. And, in my past, I've been heavily involved in school-based practice. Right now, I'm a home health OT. I'm an advocacy-centered OT. But I want to call out to medical-based OTs. Even if you've never touched school-based practice in your life, solidarity is so important for us to support OTs in all settings. We're not in competition with each other. We're all on the same team. All of us that are in rehab and health and human services, ideally, we want to create a culture where we start to be on the same team in looking at transformative outcomes for the clients that we mutually serve. That can mean signing up to Support Now and send a letter to Congress, to your legislators, connect with the school-based OTs that need you, because if it does result that OTs do lose school-based jobs en masse, they're going to need reskilling and retraining to navigate the other settings that are there. So I want to encourage you guys to take challenges as opportunities and an opportunity to build coalitions and to build support. If you've never been a school-based OT in your life, please consider being in solidarity with school-based OTs on your state level and your federal level, and getting to know a little bit about what practices are impacting their setting, because really these are all interconnected. They all impact each other. Believe it or not, what Medicare sets as Medicare guidelines for OTs impact how it gets interpreted for Medicaid, which then changes how school-based services are often defined, because many school-based services actually seek reimbursement for medically appropriate services in school-based districts. In doing effective advocacy, we have to know how all the different parts and pieces of the system work together, and we have to move in tandem, usually across party lines in issue-based centered care. This is kind of what it looks like to be in solidarity, not just with other occupational therapists, but with the disability rights movement overall. So let this be an invitation. Tap in, check in with our state and national associations, check in with your school-based OTs. Consider using your platform, using your voice to be part of this lineage of fighting for accessible services for people with disabilities who often in the United States, it's so prohibitive to even seek having their own income. Often people with disabilities can be 100% dependent on public infrastructure to receive these services. And if that does get functionally cut off, then we do need to open doors to innovation and partnerships to make these services even more accessible. This is what, showing up for occupational justice looks like. There's no way that we can avoid the policy realities that mediate how our services are delivered. The more we learn about it, the more we get involved, the more opportunity things can actually go in our favor, and that we learn how to navigate these types of challenges. This is actually baked in. If you're a US-based OT, this is baked into our practice framework, and it even provides guidelines on how to move through that. That's something that I really want to put some work into, seeing how can we translate and make that document a little bit easier to understand. And I'm hoping if you took the time to watch this, making that case that we need to broaden our perspective beyond our own individual setting, own practice setting. Oh, hey, John, so good to hear. I hope you create this. John's work is a really great example of that. He was the first guest on my podcast during his initial orientation to occupational therapy. He got to see firsthand the divestment from traditional arts and crafts OT and mental health settings that took place in the late 70s and 80s. And that shifted, and it's something like 25 to 40% of OTs lost their jobs during that divestment. And that shifted then the OT workforce, amplifying itself up in the Medicare. As we follow through where the funding goes and how to be in solidarity with these communities, this is in alignment with the moral treatment movement. A lot of that resource got taken into law enforcement and through criminal justice-based systems, and those OTs have followed there. There's a huge movement to bring justice-based OT back to reducing recidivism and getting people in the community. So I'm bringing this up just to show that even though this has uniquely been part of my lens based on, getting started in governmental advocacy, I want to sort of have us all look behind Oz's mask and know that this context has always been here, has always been available to us. This is part of our roles of OTs as descendants of the moral treatment movement, from the arts and crafts movement, from responding to the crisis of World War I and World War II. These are invitations for OTs to show up, to come into our fullness, and to really show what creative problem solving looks like in context and in solidarity with a diverse community, especially across difference. This could be our opportunity to shine. So if you're a medical-based OT, check out those resources in the link. Learn enough about school-based practice to uphold and uplift, because those are your future clients. Once you're on the birth to 21, that's when medical needs are going to come about. And wouldn't that be amazing if we created millions of OTs jobs showing up for young adults with disabilities after they've plateaued off of school-based services? Shouldn't we be involved in those conversations of what that could look like? I want to inspire you to imagine new possibilities. And definitely thank you so much for watching right now, John. Check out that episode. I'll include the link in the show notes. John really has built his entire career, even as a traditional medical model OT, into being an advocate for the American with Disabilities Act that started in the 1990s, showing up in solidarity with the disability justice movement. He can show you really tangible examples of what that looks like and how that is deeply embedded and appropriate in your role as an occupational therapist. Let's show up right now for the school-based OTs, and most importantly, for our future clients that need us to access, participate, succeed, and experience occupational justice and well-being in their lifetime. It's go time, guys. Thank you.